Oh, and we're live. We'll see if anybody joins us. Sean, you're welcome when you cut the podcast there on the front end for the Apple Podcast. I'm talking to my water bottle instead of my microphone. Holy cow. Maybe I am too drugged up, too much Dayquil in me. Dealing with a head cold. We were in the middle of this. I had the fun privilege Saturday morning, of doing the prayer of blessing for 2 new Habitat homes for single moms. Both have 1 child each. I think it was homes 56 and 57.
Okay.
One of them was a Marathon Petroleum Project, like they had all the volunteers, and then one was they're supposed to have 12 churches that partner for the Apostles Build because there were 12 apostles. They had 14, so we added 2. So that's fine. We'll take more.
Yeah.
And so that was fun. Some Gateway folks were there who participated in various ways on the Marathon Project side. So that was neat.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And then got to be there for the ribbon cutting when the new homeowner got to cut the ribbon. And there's a lot that they do if people ever have thought of it as just like a home given to them, there's like 400 hours of work that they have to do by Habitat on behalf of the program, like or working at Habitat. There's stuff they have to work on their personal debt and have a savings and all kinds of stuff and learn the basics of home ownership. So it's a really, really neat program. And the moms were very appreciative. The kids, they were little. One wanted to be at flag football instead of at a ceremony. Don't know that I can blame them, but it was a fun Saturday morning, fun way to start the day. Speaking of Saturday mornings, we got something coming up this coming Saturday. You want to tell everybody about that?
Yeah, there is a city prayer event on Saturday at Dorney Plaza downtown. Starts at 10:00 a.m. I think you have a role in that. Pastor Robert's really taking the lead, I think, for Gateway.
Yeah, I delegated to him. I believe he and Matt Buttermore, one of our elders, are praying. There are 5 churches, last I heard, that are going to be involved. Other congregations may show up, but at least 5 churches leading the prayer time. We are doing educators, teachers in one group, and then students as another group. And so I'm not sure, Robert or Matt, who's praying for what. I think that they were going to have someone to represent that group that is prayed over. And then you'll get to mix and mingle and hopefully pray with people from other congregations for those groups. And so quick leader-led prayer, and then 2 or 3 minutes of the group praying. Starts at 10. My guess is by 10:45 we'll be done. And so for anybody interested in that, just parking down there right now, that one parking lot is becoming a building or a garage. I don't know, like elevators.
I think it's a new courthouse, like juvenile court or family court, something like that.
So they're missing a parking lot. So just find some other place, get over there early, get to the library parking lot or something. That's Saturday. And then you got something else for Monday.
Yep. It's not this coming Monday. It's not tomorrow, Monday, but Monday, October 9th. Is that the right date?
Yep.
Yeah, it is. Okay. I had the 11th in my head for some reason, but the 9th is Monday. We have our last conversations with leaders for this year. So we've been doing those. We're going to focus on, or specifically have our operations and go staff there, but you can bring questions about anything. But specifically, if you've got budget questions, facilities questions, mission trips, anything like that, those staff will be there. So
we had
that's at North Main, our North Main campus.
We had our Discover Gateway lunch for County Road 9 today, and there was a gentleman very interested in missions, and I mentioned that to him. I said, I know there's a lot of new language that you learn when it's your first couple weeks here, but great opportunity to ask questions with Kelly and Luke about our Go stuff or operations for whoever may be there. So if you have any questions about that, and also, and we'll probably mention this in a future episode, but if you're into missions, it was announced today, October 30th, that a missions dinner last year was great. What I loved most about that event was hearing from congregation folks who went on trips, who are never behind a microphone,
right?
Got to tell their part of the story of what they were doing.
Yeah.
And it was so neat to hear how God is working in through so many different people on trips that we can't all be at, and so you get to
Mhm.
hear what God is doing through Gateway, through the congregation you're a part of. And so highly encourage people to sign up for that. But if you're interested in missions, come to this next conversations with leaders. So this episode is going to be, we're going to go back to book discussions. We did this in previous times, but we had drawn out a book over the course of many episodes. We're going to see if doing a book in one episode is even possible. So obviously we will not be able to cover it by chapter, but we'll see how this goes, and maybe just give you an idea of a book to maybe discover, introduce to you, to go check it out. The book that we're going to talk about, first off, just to let you know, it's not a religious book. It's not faith-based. I actually discovered the book as I was listening to a fitness podcast, and there was an athlete, and she was basically, something happened with her and her coach, and that relationship came to an end. And as she was talking about it, the person interviewing her could just tell that she was really struggling with maybe either the kind of direction the coach was giving her, or not just doing well with receiving feedback. And so he asked her, "Have you ever read the book Thanks for the Feedback?"
Mhm.
And that title was very intriguing to me. I didn't care what the rest of that podcast was about. I was now stopping and going to find this book. I originally listened to it, and at the time I was listening to it, I think like every day I would come into your office, Laura, and say, "Here's the quote. This book is amazing." And it quickly became top 2 of non-faith-based books that I've ever encountered as far as helpful wisdom. We believe that there's special revelation, which is in God's word, but there's general revelation that we find out just through the wisdom throughout the world that is true and good. And there was just a lot of wisdom in this book. And so I listened to it. I ordered a physical copy. I told you to get a physical copy. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't an opinion. It was, and that's right out of the book. It was like, "Laura, you need to get this book." And then the whole premise is that we live in a world of constant feedback, but it's up to us as the receivers as to what we do with that feedback. Feedback is unavoidable. So what are you going to do when you're given feedback? And it's feedback. You get feedback from your kids. You get feedback from your spouses. You get feedback from your friends. You get feedback from your parents. You get feedback from your in-laws. You get feedback from your boss. You get feedback from everybody.
Mhm.
What do you do with it? And this wasn't in the notes, but they had a little playfulness with the idea that feedback originally was this idea of when amplifiers, like guitar players and their
Mhm.
instruments,
Mhm.
when it would go wrong, the speakers would give feedback. And every now and then you still hear that with a microphone, and everybody's
Yeah.
screech. And the whole premise is, how did we turn something that is screeching to our ears into supposedly this thing that's supposed to be pleasant, that we
Mhm.
all enjoy, our annual reviews and all of this stuff? And so trying to say, hey, it's not really changed, but what are you going to do with all of this feedback? And so I thought, instead of just going on a solo journey, that, growth opportunities like this are fun with friends. And so this became the staff book study for this year. We're not finished with it yet, but we are nearing it up very soon. And so we thought we would just discuss this book. Thanks for the feedback. Laura's already posted the link up there. Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen are the authors of the book. So I've already kind of covered it. This book is for everybody. So you don't have to be a boss. You don't have to be a coach. You don't have to be. You could be retired. You could be a stay-at-home mom. Every relationship. If you have a relationship with anybody, there's feedback there. But if you are someone in authority, you are a coach, you're a boss, you're a teacher, you're going to learn a lot about giving feedback through the study of receiving feedback. I know that Laura and you and I talk a lot about that, of what we're learning about how to give feedback to others. But then if you are the athlete, not the coach, you're the employee, not the boss, you're the student, not the teacher, you're someone under the authority of someone else, you're going to learn a lot about receiving feedback. And really the crux of the book is that the power is in your hands as to whether or not you're going to benefit from the feedback that is given to you, because that's always the opportunity. There's the opportunity for this to be growth for you, for there to be a benefit for you. And so that I won't get into, because immediately people think, but what if the feedback is stupid or something like that? They cover that.
Yeah.
Always an opportunity for it to benefit for you, even if it's in how you respond in that moment to feedback that is not just your opinion that it's stupid, but is actually very unhelpful and ridiculous feedback. There's an opportunity to grow. So, Laura, you've read my notes. I have not read your notes. And so we basically got two questions that are going to drive the rest of this conversation. What surprised you the most in this book?
You want me to go first?
That's it.
Okay. You sort of talked about this already. I think one of the things that surprised me was I tend to think of feedback as just the formal feedback. And so all of the little things that, like, sometimes they would give examples in the book and I'm like, that's not feedback. Like, that's just just a conversation that somebody had. But then when you really think about it, it's like, yeah, that actually is feedback. And like in a kind of an example that in my own life that popped up a couple weeks ago, is I had sent an email to a group of people, and I would say the majority of the people, there was a question in there that I wanted answered. The majority of the people answered the question that I asked. And a couple people, when they emailed me back, it was like they were answering something totally different. Like their answers were way different than what I had intended to get back from this email. And at first, I just thought, oh, this is so frustrating. Like they didn't answer what I wanted them to. And then I started to think, like, Laura, that might be information. Maybe that's feedback that you were not as clear as you thought that you were when you wrote this email. And so I actually asked you about it. I sent you the email. I was like, was I clear in here? Like, give me a little bit of feedback, because it was just something that I thought, okay, even in that silly, frustrating, what was frustrating to me response from a couple of people, I thought maybe there's actually feedback in there that I need to pay attention to. And so I think that kind of surprised me in just the sense of the things that are all around us that we don't necessarily lump into that feedback category, but still could be or still are. Yeah. And then I have another one, but it may tie into something that you're saying, so I'll hold on to it.
Yeah. What I appreciate with what you said there is that, so the growth opportunity that you've had there is thinking, this is an opportunity for me to receive this as feedback, their response, but also that it's not, that feedback isn't bad. Because I think that, one of my initial reasons for wanting to do this book is that feedback can feel so personal. It can feel like criticism. Sometimes it's, the book explains that most of the time it's because the intent of what one person has with what the feedback is and the receiver and what they're hearing is off. And so it's like you're playing different games. One person's trying to play baseball and one person's trying to play football, and it's just wires are crossed, nothing's working. And making it where that conflict in feedback often keeps us from actually just benefiting from, maybe it wasn't said the best way, but there's something there that needs to be observed, or that because so often that the conflict of the feedback happens, the screech in our ears, and then it's just done. Like we're unable to actually hear the feedback for what it is, what their intent is. And so even there for you, stopping and pausing is growth from what we're learning in the book. What I thought was surprising, it was like clarifying. I always appreciate things that kind of put the, yeah, that's it, for me. In the book, they talk about how we easily confuse the feedback that we're being given. There's three categories. Is it evaluation? Is it coaching? Or is it encouragement? And so that's the different kinds of games, is that maybe somebody's trying to encourage you, but you hear it as evaluation, and so it's going to be totally different intent versus reception. And that is the confusion between, is it evaluation, is it coaching, or is it appreciation? And really, appreciation is pretty easy to distinguish. Coaching and evaluation is probably where there is the most confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why feedback can always feel so negative and can feel so, as staff have talked, your identity. It kind of feels like they're talking about you, when no, it's outside of you. It's a way for something to be better. And so the negatively aspect of it can mean that the feedback crushes us, that it ends up us defending ourselves unnecessarily, or it could mean that somebody says something that needs to change, but we just let it roll off of our backs because we're just going to keep making the same mistake again and again, because either we view this person as being not an expert, so they don't have no right to speak into this, or they didn't know my intent or whatever. And so those three, appreciation, evaluation, and coaching, I thought would be helpful to just explain a little bit further. The appreciation kind of feedback is about relationship and human connection. This is what I found most helpful in appreciation, is that it's not just a general, hey, thanks for doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
It's, hey, thanks for doing such a good job and getting I'm going to try and say hors d'oeuvres now. What's the food ready for the event? Going hors d'oeuvres.
Oh, you're talking about hors d'oeuvres?
Hors d'oeuvres. There you go. Yeah. My mind.
Sorry, I didn't know where you were going with that.
Thanks for that. But so you're trying to be very specific.
Yes.
Thank you for picking up all of the toys after the kids in the 2-year-old's classroom was done. Not just thanks for serving. It gets specific. It's saying, I see you, but not just I see you. I see you and I saw what you did, and I'm being specific in my appreciation of that. And so, it's easy as someone overstaffed to just tell, worship leaders, hey, good job this Sunday, or to Karsten on tech, hey, good job. But, looking for specific things to say, hey, I saw this happen. Nobody else did, because it was 10 minutes before the service, and you were having to go back and recable 3 different instruments because there was something going on in the sound system. Nobody else saw it. I saw it. And thank you for taking care of that, because nobody else saw it. So that's appreciation. A lot to learn there in all of our relationships that would help them to be more connected. And then there's coaching. This is where the aim of the feedback is to help someone learn, grow, or change. This happens in sports all the time. It happens in the world of the arts and theater. Directors do this.
School.
Yes, school, acting coaches, music, band teachers, music teachers, and so on. And then there's evaluation. And this is what most of us think of when we think of feedback. This is where you're getting an assessment. You're getting a ranking. You're getting a rating. It's very definitive of, this is where you stand. It could be that it could be done by your peers. It could be done by your boss or your supervisor. It could be done by politicians are constantly evaluated this way by the community, the citizens. And so evaluation, if you interpret someone trying to coach you as evaluation, it doesn't go very well. And there's a story that they had that was quite intriguing to me. And I remember when I listened to it, I brought it up to you, because we'll so often talk about, like, well, I respond this way because of, it's my personality, or it's my God made me this way, or DNA, or whatever. And there's a story of twin girls doing softball batting practice with their dad. And he was giving them the exact same coaching. Like, he was wanting his daughters to just be better at softball and hitting the ball. One daughter, again, twins, one daughter received all of what her dad said is coaching. And she had a great time with the batting practice.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other twin girl received everything as evaluation. Dad doesn't think I can do this well. He doesn't think I'm doing this right.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a terrible time. And two girls, identical twins, not the same person by any means, the same feedback, and yet two very different experiences. And that example made me think, how many times have I been the one daughter hearing it as evaluation when the person's intent was coaching, and I had a bad experience when that was not the intent of the person at all. And so there was this quote on page 30 that said this: our responses don't always hinge on the skill of the giver or even on what is being said. And so often we think they just didn't say this well.
Yeah.
They didn't have all of the information they needed. Rather, our responses are based on how we are hearing what's said and which kind of feedback we are getting. Meaning, do we think it's evaluation when it's coaching? Or even worse, do we think it's appreciation when it's coaching? Or like the person's trying to help us be better, and we're hearing that as, oh, they think I'm great. And so there are ways to disconnect all around. One of the things that I've often thought about over this last year is, I think I've mentioned this before, Laura, to you at least, maybe on the podcast, that it was a year and a half, I don't know how long ago, when I, after saying God loves you and I love you too so much, I was starting to hear a lot of it back from the congregation. And it made feedback easier to hear because I'm hearing it now. These people love me. I know these people support me. And wanting that to be cross-pollinated, staff having that feeling, the congregation having that feeling across the board, where that it's not identity markers when someone says something, but we're wanting each other to grow in our relationship with the Lord and grow in our holiness, and seeing feedback as appreciation and coaching, and not this like judgment or identity that we can so easily hear coming out of mouths of people when it's not what's coming out of them. It's just what's the filter that we have. And so maybe that's helpful for somebody. That was what was really helpful to me in this book of, is it appreciation? Is it evaluation? Is it coaching? And again, as supervisors, being clear with those we are over, getting better specifically with appreciation, but then allowing, if there's an annual assessment like we have here at Gateway, that evaluation to be clear, but the coaching and the months leading up to it to be directing towards a good evaluation for that employee, that's part of what it means to be a supervisor. So there's what surprises. Did I touch on the other thing that you said you may touch on?
Yeah. You mentioned a couple of times the gap between our intentions and then the impact that we have on people. So there's a whole, it's either a whole chapter or a whole section on blind spots. And we all know what blind spots are. We all know we have them. But they talked a lot about that and how we often are so much more gracious to ourselves because we know what our intentions are. But we don't always, or maybe rarely, stop to ask or pay attention to what our impact on other people actually is. And so we're going to talk in the next question about having a growth mindset, but they talk a lot about just a lot of like really practical tips on how you can get better at that, at seeing your blind spots. And so that was, I don't know if like I was surprised by that, but that was another thought that I had.
Yeah,
that question.
The blind spot was a great chapter. I mean, if we had, if we were doing multiple episodes on this, the sidetracking, that part was key. And almost everybody who was a parent on staff, it's like, I see my kids doing this all the time, where you're talking about, topic A, and then suddenly a topic B comes in, and it's like, but this has nothing to do with topic A, but that was the dig that the other person had. Since you're picking on me about topic A, picking on me, maybe it's not evaluation, maybe it's coaching. Now I'm going to pick on you about topic B. Oh, well, and I'll pick on topic C. And then suddenly it's like, hold on a second. Like, what about just topic A, which was the original reason for bringing up the conversation? And so there's just a lot of helpful relational advice and really opportunities to grow in all the many relationships that we have. So
Yep.
that's what surprised us. Laura, what's a key takeaway that you think everybody should know from this book?
I think something that just came up over and over is, or these are my own words, but just stay curious. Seek to understand. When I was still a teacher, we were into the 7 habits. That's really big. I know in Findlay City schools, maybe some other schools are taking that on as well. But that's one of the 7 habits is seek first to understand. So before you just dismiss stuff, like just pause and tell me more is a good question that you can ask people um, to try and figure out why there is that gap between your intentions and their interpretation or their experience, the impact that you're having. So, yeah.
And then we joked about it a little bit. People may not have understood it. So out of this book, you gave me on our coaching documents every month, how can I help you? And you were very specific. And what did you tell me?
Well, I said that sometimes I don't know, like when you'll come in my office and you're talking, I don't always know if you're just sharing thoughts that you have, like brainstorming some things, sharing observations about things, and maybe not even me, it might be just about stuff. Um, or if you're giving me a suggestion of something I can do, like maybe with people that I supervise or something like that. Or if you are giving me a direction, like a command, like you need to do this. So there could be a you need to do this, a hey, it might be helpful if you do this, or it could be none of those. It could be you're just
Thinking out
talking,
loud.
you're just brainstorming, just thinking out loud. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so now I have on my Monday morning
Mm.
Todoist, don't forget, Laura needs clarity. Is this just a thought you have, a suggestion, or an action item? And that came out of the book.
Yeah.
So we're trying to practice what we're
Yeah.
bringing before the whole staff. The key takeaway for me, I've mentioned this already, but it is really on you, the receiver of feedback, as to whether or not you're going to maximize the opportunity to grow and learn something valuable from the feedback that's being given to you. I've mentioned this a bunch. You can critique the feedback giver all you want. You can say they didn't deliver the feedback very well.
Which is probably true. They probably didn't deliver it well.
They probably didn't do it. They were probably very nervous telling you because nobody likes to give criticism. Like it's pretty uncomfortable. There's a ton of stuff that they don't know about the situation that you do know. They're not sitting in your seat. You know, if they were sitting in my seat, they would see things differently. We know all of that. There's all of these reasons why you can justify their feedback just being thrown away. But ultimately, there's probably something for you to learn from what's being said, even if it's often, sometimes this is what I get from the feedback. I don't realize what people don't know because I sit in a seat where I know a lot about what's happening and why it's happening. And sometimes the feedback is simply a gap in, oh, we need to communicate why we do that. Yeah. I didn't realize that there was a gap there, but that's good to know. That was the feedback, that they were saying something else, but the actual feedback was, hey, we just want to be informed. Okay, that's good to know. Let's see how we can do that. Conversations with leaders comes out of this kind of idea. It also relates this whole idea of the power is in your hands, how you will grow or not. They bring up this idea that how you respond to feedback is directly related to how you view your identity. And the idea being, do you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? So fixed mindset, are your traits, are your abilities, are they set? Are they unchangeable? Are they unmoving? Or is there room and possibility that you need to grow? And sometimes we respond to feedback as if I've already perfected this area of my life and I don't need to receive what you're saying to me. And like, we know that's not true. Yeah. But we can respond to, like, I've already perfected doing my job the way that I'm doing it. I've already and it's not true at all. this book we mentioned, Not Christian, I think that maybe they've done, I think maybe they're believers or something. You've seen at some point they did something that is in the Christian realm. I can't remember if it's them or somebody else. There's a lot that our faith, our Christian faith, has to say about fixed versus growth mindset. And the Christian faith and God's word in particular would not nudge us, but would probably strongly shove us away from fixed mindset to growth mindset. And I say that the Christian word would be sanctification.
Mm-hmm.
That is the process of growing in holiness, of growing as godly husband and wives, as growing as parents, as growing as contributors to the body of Christ. And we call it progressive sanctification, meaning that it is progressing, it's not fixed. That how we grow in our love for God, how we think about God, what we do, all of this is not fixed when you become a Christian, but it is growing towards more and more Christ-likeness until we reach glory. And so I just found that interesting that of all people, Christians should be the most open to feedback, because we'd be like, absolutely, we've got to grow.
Yeah.
That growing is who we are.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember. Okay, so you read the book and you commanded me to get the book and read it.
I was going to buy it for you if you didn't buy it for yourself.
And I don't know if you remember, after I first read it the first time, what I said. Do you remember what I said?
No, sorry.
I hated it. And I said, I felt like, I won't say exactly what I said, but I felt terrible the whole time I read it, because I'm not that great at receiving feedback. And so the whole idea of the fixed and the growth mindsets, even that, when I first read it, I actually had a sticky note in my book that's like, can we change? Because I see in myself this like, I was afraid I had a fixed mindset. Like I couldn't change. And because I would try to change, but I still was not very good at receiving feedback. And so in one of the staff meetings, I don't think you were there, but somebody kind of brought that idea of sanctification up. And that was actually super helpful for me, because it's like, oh, okay. And when I looked at it through that lens, it's like, I can get better, just like my sanctification is slow and it's not always, I'm not progressing as fast as I would like to. I do know that I am progressing, and kind of the same thing with this. They talk a lot in the book about just knowing yourself, knowing your triggers, and using that to help you. And so it's like the more that you know yourself, you can be prepared when you're going to receive feedback, and you can get better. Together we had one instance, and then I had one solo instance this past week where there's staff people coming in, giving us some feedback. And one, I think I handled better than the other, but it's like, okay, I think I'm growing a little bit. And so it does give you hope, but you can't.
Yeah. When you read the book, it's almost like you could do like a chapter a year. Like if it was like little booklets, the Spirit of God is so gracious to us that sanctification, like, really, we need to be working on all areas, but the Spirit will say, hey, we're going to work on your patience right now.
Yeah.
We'll get to your generosity later. We'll get to your mercy later. We'll get to, whatever else. But we're just going to work on patience right now. When you read through a book that's this thick, it feels like, whoa, it's patience, it's generous, it's like everything at once. And so, you start to slow it down. I think over the course of the year doing it has helped. And then it's one of those books that probably, in my mind, is a go back and reread every few years of, hey, what's the next area of growth? Kind of like in sanctification. All right, I've grown in my patience. Where do I need to grow now? I need to grow maybe in my prayer life, or maybe I need to grow somewhere else in serving or something. And so, but you have to read through it, not as evaluation, but as coaching,
Right. Yep.
And that helps as well. There was one area that you mentioned, and so that popped in my mind so we're having annual evaluations, and one of the things that it discusses in there is the idea of when it is evaluation. So this is now ranking, end of year, how you've done. the idea of how are you responding in that? Like, how do you respond? And like the categories are, you know, so the feedback's given, you can hear it, like, you know, like where it crushes you and you hold on to it forever. It crushes you and you immediately dismiss it. You know, like it encourages you and you immediately dismiss it, and encourages you and you hold on to it forever. Like, what are your responses to how the feedback worked? And one of the things that I realized is that it doesn't even really matter. Well, Laura, you would know. How do I respond to positive feedback?
You just kind of let it go.
Yeah, immediately dismiss it. So
Yeah.
So I'm working on trying to, at the very least, like the trick in my mind is honor the person who is appreciating you, like, you know. But I also know that any coaching or anything, that I know that immediately it feels identity to me. But I know that in 24 hours, I'll start to implement what needs to be done. So it's almost like I've thought about it. And so if the elder who's going to be giving me my annual evaluation hears this, he knows what I'm going to do. Starting off with, hey, I'm going to hear what you have to say, and here's what's going to happen. I'm not really going to have much of a response right now because it's going to be kind of overwhelming. And then in 24 hours, I'll put a plan in place of how to make this happen, you know, because it's like the wrestling of, these guys love me, but there's areas that I need to improve. They see these areas that I need to improve, but in 24 hours I'll be good. You know, like, but I just know that's how I work now. And I wish that wasn't that way, but it's almost like the book helps you to say, hey, that's growth. You know that now.
Yeah.
And we can work with that, you know, like with any of your staff or your spouse or whoever it may be. There are ways that you can be self-aware of how you respond to feedback, so that you can not dismiss appreciation and not dwell on things forever that the person's not intending you to dwell on. Was that part an eye-opener for you, or is it pretty much, nope, I knew exactly where I landed, meaning for you?
On the holding on to
Yeah.
positive and or whatever. I don't know that I mean, I've never sat and like really consciously thought about it. So in that regard, it was eye-opening, but it was very easy for me to identify where I fall on that scale.
Yeah.
So
I think you were similar to me.
I think so. Yes.
And I think that I don't know if that's where most people land, but it is easy to hold on to that remark that your mother-in-law said, you know, like, or whoever, you know, like, you know, that feedback that felt like criticism. And then how many times, if we're going with the mother-in-law, has she said something kind that was appreciation that we don't remember? You know, like that's kind of like the gist of, like, they never say anything nice to me. No, that's not true. You know, like, but we just remember that. And that's just, again, how we are wired individually to respond to feedback. And so again, it's the knowing that you do that, which then puts the power back into your hands as to, will I make the most of this opportunity to make it a growth opportunity? So thanks for the feedback. That is the book. Highly recommend it. In fact, one of our elders had his team. He works, you know, out there, and his team read through it just based on knowing that we were reading it, and it was helpful to his team. And so great book. Coaches, teachers, whoever it may be, you can learn something from it. Anything else, Laura, that you want to share?
Nope. I think we got all my notes.
All right. That is it for this episode. We are answering your questions next time, I believe. That is what we've got on the docket. And we'll do another book. I don't know if we get to another book this year because I'm traveling in November so much that we may not get to one. But we've got a couple of books for next year. If you have any that you would like us to consider, no promises that we can get to it, drop a comment or send a message in through the website, and we will consider it if we can get it on the schedule. If not, that is it. We will see you next time.